It's Thursday and we're live at lunch. Freedom family, welcome. Today we're going to be talking about why is it that so many people pleasers find themselves addicted to food, or in another way of saying it, overeating compulsively, as opposed to, I don't know, say becoming rampant drug addicts or gambling addicts or sex addicts. Now, maybe that's true too, but in my world of working with people who struggle with overeating, what I find is the common thread that runs underneath overeaters. Every single, probably bar none, call that I have ever taken in the last 5 years is a thread of people pleasing. So if you are a self-confessed people pleaser, I am myself am a self-confessed recovering people pleaser in recovery. Then I think this video, today's live, is going to be super valuable for you, because what we're going to do is I'm going to help you understand what made you become a people pleaser, and then why food specifically seems to be the drug of choice. So welcome for those of you who knew. My name's Helen Bennett. I help people who eliminate yo-yo dieting, emotional overeating, and decades of body shame. And I try and help everybody to do that in a year or less. And if that's something sounds interesting, if that's something that sounds interesting to you, or that's something you'd like a bit of help with, you'll find all the details in the description below. But for today's purposes, I'm not here necessarily to give you a bunch of how-tos or what to do nows and practical tips. We're going a little deeper. Today is about getting into the weeds to understand a little bit of the why. What made me start overeating in the first place, and how is this connected to people pleasing? So I used a bit of clickbait, I think, in the description of this video, because I said, what makes overeaters, why are people pleasers addicted to food? So I'm going to throw out some definitions here so we can get clear on what all of this means, and we'll sort through the weeds. And by the end of this 15 minutes or so, you're going to come away with a clear understanding of the connection between all of this. So I want to say up front that out there in the media, we're hearing a lot about addiction to food. My personal experience through everybody who's reached out to me, including people who will tell me they are addicted to chocolate or crisps or pizza or whatever the case may be, what we usually find is that it's not addiction in the way that we think about it, in that once you start, you can't stop. And if you ever just have one bite of that thing in the future, you'll never be able to control yourself. It's not addiction that way. What it is addiction in the way, I think it's Dr. Gabor Mate describes it, which is as a solution to pain. It's a way that we medicate pain, a behavior or a substance that we use in order to escape, soothe, numb a certain pain. And what he often says is, don't ask why the addiction, ask why the pain. So our work today is to understand what it is about being a people pleaser that we are potentially medicating with food specifically. So I actually don't think of food as being addictive, but I think there's a clear compulsive mechanism that happens when we're experiencing a certain type of pain repeatedly, and we're finding a way to escape that pain, even if it comes at the detriment of our health and well-being. And we feel like we can't stop, even no matter how hard we try. Now, maybe that resonates with you. So what makes you, if you're a people pleaser, call yourself a people pleaser? I ask this on all of my calls with people when I first meet them now. Do you think you're a people pleaser? Everybody says yes, just a wholehearted yes right off the bat. And when we dig in a little bit, the answers can vary. But what we seem to see across the board is, I struggle to put my own needs ahead of other people, which might look like I don't really know how to say no. I feel guilty or bad for saying no. I feel guilty or bad for investing in myself, or looking after myself, or taking time for myself, because everybody else's needs come first. So where did that come from? Why don't we just, ask what we need, or just say a good old-fashioned no? We see other people doing it without any hesitation. Why do we feel so afraid to do those things, to stand up for ourselves, and to speak out? Now, here is my thesis. I'm sure I'm not the only one to come up with this, and I'm sure there's documented evidence around this, but just from the work that I've done and my own experience, what I understand now is that people pleasing, we'll call it a personality type, is something that develops all the way back. So go back in time as far as you can. And what we discover is that as a baby, we have three core fears. We fear loud noises, we fear falling, and we fear abandonment. So these are innate, primal fears that we're born with that we can't shake, we can't change, especially not as a baby. And they are built in to keep us alive. Because, of course, as a human being, we're not designed to just get up on all fours and go walking off and within a matter of minutes of popping out the womb. We are born in such a way that we depend on, we will not survive without the care of our caregivers, usually our parents. And so, of course, we are wired to be very sensitive for anything that might mean that they would leave us, that we might be abandoned. And my thesis is that it's that very fear and that attunement, that sensitivity that is dialed right up in people pleasers to the point at which they begin to look not consciously, but for every possible signal that could threaten their connection, first to their caregivers, but over time it becomes connection to friends, connection to loved ones, connection to siblings, connection, you name it. If somebody looks at you funny, the nervous system goes into fear because there's a fear of abandonment response that is completely, in many ways, overblown at that stage, but was so appropriate at a certain point in time. And so what happens? Why people pleasing? Why not other things if we have a fear of abandonment? Well, not everybody goes this route. Everybody, I believe, starts to develop personality traits based off of that fear of abandonment and that need for connection and care from their caregivers. And people pleasers tend to move into having been rewarded or getting connection from caregivers based on certain things, like if I'm kind and I'm smiley, especially as women in this society, if I'm pleasant, if I care for others, if I'm funny, if I'm pretty, name all the things, then I will get the attention and care where I need it. But if I am mean or I cry or I'm angry or I'm rude or I'm, fill in the gaps, then I could potentially threaten that relationship, which of course would fill me with a great degree of fear. So people pleasers tend to start noticing that if they could just, like a chameleon, just fit to their environment and they become so attuned and sensitive. We're often called highly sensitive. And in many ways, it's true. There's such an attunement to the emotional things that are going on around us. How can I control for everybody's emotional happiness so that I can remain safe, so that I can remain connected? What do I need to do? Who do I need to be? And then I will do anything to be that, because my nervous system goes into a space of fear if I'm not that, because I can't threaten the relationship. And so it starts when we're very, very young, as a baby. And then it grows into what we'd now call people pleasing, which can show up as people who are afraid of conflicts, people who just become perfectionists. If I can just be perfect enough, then everybody will love me. And so on and so forth. Fascinating stuff. In fact, maybe we could do another video, another live about the different types of people pleasing. I think you'll love it. But really, the bottom line is we became, as people pleasers, people who were scared to be fully ourselves. The parts of ourselves that got connection, great, we probably dialed those up. The parts of ourselves that could threaten the relationship and threaten all relationships after that were the ones that we started to hide and dial down. Now, in theory, that would be no big deal. We just, people please all the way to our graves, and that should be fine. The problem is when we are suppressing our authenticity and our needs, particularly when we're not even allowing our needs to be met, we can get into grave trouble. And now this is where food comes in. Because what I've seen over the years working with emotional eaters, binge eaters, bulimics, compulsive eaters, impulsive eaters, whatever definition we're going to call it, is that relationship with food, which we might even say looks addictive because it's a way of medicating a pain, is medicating the pain of not expressing our authenticity, of not being able to say no, of not being able to stand up for what we need, of not being able to cry when we feel grief or sadness or loneliness, and of feeling that we can't do it and it's unsafe to do so. And for some reason, those needs are so powerful that will reach for something else that will, as best as possible, approximate the need that we have. And so this is why we talk about comfort foods, right? When we need comfort, maybe we can't get it or we don't know how to ask for it. And then food comes in as a way of medicating that need in an approximate way. But why not food? Why not, I don't know, weed or gambling or sex addiction? I just don't see too many people coming in with those sort of concurrent things. Although I do see people coming in who are smokers or ex-smokers. I see people coming in who are not violent drinkers or loud drinkers, but quiet, silent drinkers. Why those things? Well, my theory is that if your entire worldview as a people pleaser is, I can't rock the boat because I cannot threaten the relationship I have, the love, acceptance, and care of everybody around me, then by God, we are not going to choose any behavior that could threaten those things. And what happens, I think, is we stumble into the sort of quiet compulsions, the ones that are oftentimes secretive and hidden, because not only do we not threaten the rejection if it's secretive, because nobody knows we're doing it, but also it means the only person who suffers the consequences of that addiction, so to speak, or that compulsion is us, for the most part, until it can get so horribly out of control that it can affect others, right? Depending. But ultimately, we can get our needs met by medicating, by finding a way to push all the frustration and the anger and all the uncomfortable emotions down, by soothing ourselves in times of grief or pain or loneliness where we don't feel it's safe to cry, of pushing down our voice when we don't feel like we can speak up. Food has a way of calming our nervous system under those circumstances. And so we stumble into this substance and this behavior that has the capacity to help us, but also doesn't threaten anybody else. And food is brilliant for that, isn't it? You can quietly eat in the car. You know, who hasn't done that? It's oftentimes it can be behind closed doors. We can present to be all fine on the outside, but behind closed doors, there's a lot of food, medicating with food. And it makes complete sense in the context of people pleasing, why it tends to be the drug of choice, the pain reliever of choice, because it's not the one that will bankrupt the family necessarily or cause damage to others and hurt others. You know, you overeat biscuits, you're not driving drunk. You know, it's a very different sort of setup. And I believe that's why it becomes synonymous with people pleasing. It's the way people pleasers medicate most often, because it's the one drug that won't necessarily threaten our relationships until that drug of choice, not that it's a choice, it's very subconscious, becomes so overused over such a long period of time that the compounding effects, the health impacts, and potentially weight gain do begin to threaten the relationship with our loved ones, in that we will either feel that we will be rejected for having a certain body, or we are damaging our insides to such an extent that our desire to stay around for our loved ones, to not lose that relationship, forces us to a place where we want to do something about it. And sadly, on that note, particularly when it's weight gain, oftentimes the very thing we try and do so desperately to ensure that we don't put on weight, so we don't threaten that relationship by being rejected based on our body shape. And the thing we usually choose is diets. You know, now everybody's choosing GLP-1s, but essentially it's just a desperate attempt to ensure that we are loved. And diets, sadly, have a predictive weight gain effect. So with all the best intention, all the hard work, all the drive, all the discipline that people pleasers have, and all the determination to do what needs to be done to get the weight off the body, sadly, that exact mechanism of dieting has a 98% failure rate. And in fact, oftentimes more weight comes on than you got off in the first place. Again, complete survival mechanism in the body. So it's such a shame that people pleasers with such desire to change the overeating relationship that is oftentimes highly compulsive because the body has needs that need to be met, then reach for the thing to solve the problem that actually makes the problem worse. So overeating is messy, and undoing years of people pleasing and starting to speak your mind and feel your feelings and feel safe to express and all of that, it takes time. That's why with the work that I do, there isn't a quick fix, but there is a permanent one. There is the one that can truly heal with a lot of reps and a lot of care and a lot of support and quite a bit of being brave as we learn to speak our truth or feel our feelings or say no and risk the rejection. But over time, we learn that we can actually be ourselves and we are going to be okay and we can be loved just like that. And as we do that, we work on all the habitual and the compulsive relationship with food. So it's a big, messy business. But the good news is, if you're watching this video, you're already 10 steps closer to solving the problem because at least you now know what the problem is. Because you notice what it's not. It's not a problem of willpower. We can only willpower our way out of our needs for so long. It's a bit like trying to willpower yourself not to breathe. When your body has needs to be met and our emotional needs are powerful, then it will find a way. And the last thing I want to say on that is people pleasers often have other drugs of choice or ways of medicating their needs, but oftentimes they're not a problem. So, for example, hard workers, workaholism, oftentimes applauded by society, not seen as an issue necessarily. But again, if I can just work hard enough and be there enough, and then I will be loved. The other one, and these are much sweeter, that often happen in childhood: imaginary friends, falling in love with a boy, member of a boy band. That was my thing. Fluffy toys, escaping into books and movies. These are all ways we found to express or experience our emotions and experience our needs or have our needs met when they weren't being met necessarily in the outside world. All righty. Yep, there was a big one today. I hope you found that valuable. If you did, I'd love you to smash the like button so we can get this content out to other people pleasers who need to hear it so they can begin their journey of freedom with food. By coming to that place of understanding of how this all began. Let's forgive ourselves. We were just little babies trying to survive. And, if you enjoy the content, then I'd love you to subscribe to the channel, and you'll see me every Thursday going live at lunch. Next week, Thursday, I'm super excited. We're going to get into a hot topic, and that is the topic of Ozempic and GLP-1s and the use of them. By the way, I have no judgment. If you're thinking of using one, if you have used one, I'm not one of those people who has a judgment about it. However, we do want to talk about impacts, what you need to know or not know if you're considering going on one, and the deeper work that will need to be done regardless of whether you're on the medication or not, because it is just, a plaster for what we now understand, hopefully after today, is a much deeper problem that's at work here. All right, that needs healing. Have a fabulous weekend. Yes, gotta like you, bloody legends. You look at you. You two lovelies who are watching this live. I see you, baby, shaking your ass. All right, have a beautiful Thursday, everybody. Smashing weekend. I will see you next Thursday, live at lunch. To your freedom, everybody. Look after yourselves.